Okay, this is really vulnerable. I'm going to pray with you right now. This is the prayer I do. And remember, I don't know what God is, but I like to pray because it feels good. Okay, so I'm not religious, and I'm not asking you to be religious. I'm just telling you what I do in the mornings because it feels really good. Dear God, higher power, Mother Nature, whatever, remove my fear, replace it with faith, and help me to serve in whatever way you see fit. That is huge. Asking what can I give today rather than what can I get is also huge, because the selfish, self-seeking behavior is a surefire way to be miserable. So I have to consciously remind myself, what can I give today rather than what can I get? And then, where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? That is from Marianne Williamson. She's so brilliant. She has the best meditations and prayers. And I love that one. It's just kind of just asking, to be guided by love and faith rather than fear and lack. Anyway, that's what I do, and that's what I say before all my episodes and in the morning, because if I don't take that moment to center myself and, get grateful and affirm that I want to lead with love today and faith and abundance rather than fear and lack and jealousy and envy and depression and fucking, not that you can always control that because you can't. But anyway, my point is I like to wake up and get my brain in a positive space. So that is what I do. Moving on, I want to talk about my weight, because I apparently have lost a bit of weight, but I don't know how much weight I've lost because I don't have a scale, because Stephen left 2 months ago and he took the scale. He took the scale. I can't believe that bastard took the scale. Oh God. I'm going to get the scale back. Yeah. So he took the scale. So I don't have the scale. But I didn't really care about the scale. The scale was just kind of there. I was never really a scale kind of gal. I'm a poet, don't you know it? And so when he took the scale, I never really thought to, I would weigh myself because it was there. And of course you have babies and you gain and lose like crazy. But my point is, I didn't really think much of it. I could see that I had lost some weight from honestly the stress and the anxiety. I could see that I was eating less. My appetite was kind of gone in the beginning. So, and then I have been eating more, but I've been getting a lot of, and I know I should not read the comments, but sometimes they just pop up. And I did this recent post on TikTok, and it was like overwhelming the amount of people concerned about my weight. So I just wanted to address that because I don't know. I think it's an important conversation, and I would love to know in the comments if any of you have struggled with eating disorders or food weight issues, and how does that affect your daily life? I find it really interesting because, if you have issues around drugs or alcohol, right, you could fix those by becoming totally abstinent and totally sober, but you can't just not eat. So I would think that, because there's a program called Overeaters Anonymous that helps with people who are not just overeaters, but undereaters too. But I would think that would be a very tricky issue to navigate, because you need food to survive. And there are so many foods that are so addictive, like refined flour and refined sugar. Some say are more addictive than cocaine. But nobody really takes it seriously because cake is legal. So we don't think about the fact that it can be lethal too if we abuse it, right? Anyway, so let's talk about food. My mom was the type of mom who had like cakes and candy and whatever you wanted all the time. It was always on the kitchen counter. I was the best house to go to as a kid because I had all the treats, the snacks, the sweets, the salties, the everything. There was never any like, you've had too many cupcakes. Fuck that. No, it was like chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast. And my mom's going to be watching this being like, Laura, stop. In her defense, she always cooked these brilliant home cooked meals. So she did make sure we were getting fruits, vegetables, protein, all that stuff. She absolutely did. It wasn't like we never had like microwave dinners. Like she was a cook. And that's another reason the neighborhood loved her, because she cooked enough for the entire neighborhood. But on top of having home cooked meals, we also did have full access to sweets and salty stuff whenever we wanted. So I could have become really addicted to it all. But what happened was interesting. I could kind of take it or leave it because it was there all the time. I didn't feel the obsession, whereas some of my friends who didn't have access to sweets so much at their house, when they came over, they were like, hell yeah, let's binge. And I never got that because I had all the access. But that's just me personally. I'm sure other people have different stories. Oh yeah, there was refined flour and sugar all over and I became addicted as a kid. I'm sure that is a very common scenario as well. But for me, that just wasn't the case. Now, don't get mad at me when I tell you this. Please don't get mad, because I understand it's really annoying to hear this for a lot of people. I know that because I've been told that. So I always tried to not say this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I have a fast metabolism. Fuck you, Laura. Must be nice. I got to say, now that I'm in my 30s, it 100% has slowed down. But I do eat a plant-based, healthy diet, and I don't tend to overeat, which is why I think I'm still thin. If I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be. But growing up, I had an extraordinarily fast metabolism. My father is 6'5" and a stick, okay? I was a broom, still kind of am, just a stick with hair. When I was 12, my genes were a 00, okay? 00. I would walk down the halls, junior high, it's relentless bullying. I would walk down the halls and people would scream, "You're bulimic, anorexic girls coming down the hallway." And I'm like, if only you knew all the food I ate. I remember in the cafeteria when I was in junior high, I really wanted I loved salad. I genuinely, what 12-year-old is like, I love a salad right now. I could really go for a nice leafy green salad. When you're 12, like who, what, huh? But I loved salads. And I really wanted to get a salad from the cafeteria. And I didn't ever because I was bullied for being too skinny. So I thought if I got a salad, they would confirm their suspicions that I had an eating disorder or just was trying to be skinny. I don't know. So I would get like a burger instead. This was obviously pre-vegan days. I would order like crazy amounts of food just to be like, fuck you, I do eat. But really, I just wanted some leafy greens. And I think too, having access to all that junk food at home, I don't know. I just was into vegetables, whatever. So my mother, because we were never, ever put on any sort of diet or anything like that, none of us girls, it's me and my two older sisters, have food issues that I'm aware of. None of us do. And I find it really interesting. And I worry about how I am with my kids because, Alfie is in this phase where he's ice cream. He does this thing called up speaking right now. And his teacher's trying to get us to help him out with it. So if he goes ice cream, then we go ice cream. And he goes ice cream. So he does fix it, but I think it's so cute, the upspeak. So I'm kind of like, oh, do we have to? Do your kids ever mispronounce a word, but you also mispronounce it because it's so funny and you don't want them to ever say it correctly? Because I 100% do that. Like he calls bananas bananas. It's banana. And I'm like, do you want a banana with almond butter? And it's really bad. I know he should be saying it correctly, but it's just so funny that he says banana. And so I just don't want that to end. Like even when he's 30, I would like him to call them bananas. Anywho, or like I told you, he calls smoothies fussies, which should change, honestly, to be honest. Okay. So with him, he definitely becomes obsessed. If he has a sweet, then like if he has a piece of cake on a Friday, the entire 2 weeks after, cake, I want cake, obsessed, singing about it, talking about it. And it's like, anyway, I've got to have that nutritionist on my podcast because she said she would do it. I can't remember her name, but y'all will tell me in the comments. She's like a big Instagram nutritionist for toddlers, and she helps around food issues. Because I don't know, like my mom would have just been like, okay, here. And maybe then he would be fine like I was. But then part of me is scared of giving him too much sugar, but then I don't ever want to be too restrictive. So it's just, I still haven't mastered the technique. So in the comments below, if you have little kids, let me know how you handle the sweets or like how many they're allowed to have per day or all that stuff. Still navigating that. Okay. But so growing up, I never really had food issues. I was just a fucking stick, and I would really wished that I was not so skinny, but it just was the way that my genetics were. I was just a broom. And like I said, my dad is 6'5" and still very skinny. So now I would say that I have been eating less. I eat like one less meal a day. I think when you start eating less, your stomach shrinks. And so that's what happened. We got separated. I couldn't eat for a couple of weeks, meaning I ate minimally. I was so anxious and tense all the time that I was in that crisis mode. And so my appetite was nearly non-existent. So I just ate minimally. And from there, my stomach shrank. And now I just naturally am eating less because of that. Like it's 11:30 right now and I have not eaten anything. I have had 3 coffees. Wow, that sounds really fucked. But I will eat. I'm going to eat lunch. I just don't tend to eat breakfast anymore. And then I normally stop eating around 8. But then I think I had an apple at like 8:30 last night. And that was my last piece of food. But I do have a nice big lunch. And maybe one day a week I'll have breakfast. And then I will have dinner around 5. Now you have to remember, Steven didn't eat dinner for years. He has not. So because when you have no one to cook for, you just don't tend to cook. So I would literally make dinner for the kids and then I would just eat their scraps or like random cereal or like a piece of toast. Like really sad on my part. Because when you're not eating with someone, you just tend to struggle to get inspired or motivated to cook. At least that's me. So that was kind of it for years, was like, okay, I guess my dinner is like a bowl of cereal at 5 p.m. or whatever. So I would just kind of snack. Anyway, I don't know that it's a huge problem, and I don't even know how much I weigh now because I haven't had a scale in 2 months. So I don't know. So my psychiatrist, I brought it to his attention today. And because I just thought, look, I don't think it's an issue, but people are concerned. So I just want to let you know I am eating less. I'm still eating like 2 meals a day. Yes, it does feel good to go long periods without. But you could call that intermittent fasting, like 16/8, you know? By the way, I just want to be very clear. I'm here with you to just share my experience, strength, and hope with you. I am not qualified to give you advice or anything about anything ever. Consider me a friend that's chatting your ear off about anything and everything. So please, I am not saying go intermittent fast or whatever. I am not qualified. I'm just sharing my experience with you. That is all this is. Okay? Just want to point that out. So for me, going 16 hours and then without eating and then 8 hours with does feel good to me. Like I have more energy and I don't get bloated. And so I don't know. I told him about it all and he was like, interesting. He's like, because intermittent fasting does give you a dopamine rush, and that could be what you're after, is that sort of rush you get from, not eating as much. He goes, just watch it, get a scale and let's make sure. He said for my weight, because I'm 6 feet tall. And again, I had to like guess my weight. So whatever, I'm not even going to go there. But he said, I'm just ever so slightly under the, is it BPM? Dude, I don't know shit about shit. Okay. He said I'm at 17 and you're supposed to be 18 to 25%. So I will watch it and I will watch it. Okay. I say I've never had eating issues, but I did though once. Okay. When I was in an abusive relationship, when I was 18 years old, I met a guy at a club at 2 a.m. and he told me I was outside smoking a cigarette, one of those Capris, those really skinny ones. And this guy comes up to me. He's beautiful. And honestly, he's prettier than most women, like big lips and just big eyes and just stunning man. And he comes up to me and he's like, God, I think you're beautiful. And I was like, thank you. And he's like, you should be a model. And I'm like, wow, really? And he's like, I'm a photographer. And I'm like, you are? And he's like, yeah, I'd love to shoot you sometime. And I'm like, pictures, right? You don't want to kill me. He's like, pictures, yeah. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And he's like, do you want some Coke? I'm like, obviously. And so I take a bump. We exchange phone numbers. And then we move on with our lives. He calls me a couple days later. Laura, yes? I'm going to call him Damon. Okay, I'm not going to give you his real name. I think he's in jail now, but anyway. He's like, come to New York. I think you could work as a model. Come to New York. I want to shoot you. I'm like, wow, really? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, I'll think about it. So then I leave LA and I go back home because the girls who I was living with, their lease was up. They were going back to college in Chicago and I had nowhere to stay. So I went back to Downers Grove, Illinois, which is right outside Chicago where I'm from, back home. And I'm there for about a week. And this guy keeps calling every single day. Laura, come to New York. Laura, come to New York. I'm like, who is this again? He's like, remember Damon? We met at 2 a.m. I gave you that bump of cocaine and told you should be a model. I'm like, oh yeah. And he keeps calling and calling and calling and calling, which one would think red flag, but 18-year-olds are like, wow, he really likes me. So then I remember like on day 6, I got in this big fight with my sister. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just go to New York. Fuck you. And she was like, yeah, go to New York. Fuck you. And I was like, okay, fine. Fuck you. So I call Damon and I'm like, I'm coming to New York. And he's like, really? And then I go back to my sister and I'm like, hey, can I borrow like $200 for a plane ticket? And she's like, yeah, anything to get you the fuck out of here. I don't know if she said that, but whatever. She didn't say that, but she did help me with the plane ticket. And so I flew to JFK to New York City with $40 in my pocket and no cell phone because I had dropped my cell phone in the toilet or something, and I didn't have a working cell phone. So I had no cell phone and $40 in my pocket, and I bought a one-way ticket to New York City to meet a guy who I met once at 2 a.m. at a nightclub. I had his name, his phone number, and his address written down on a napkin. And I get off the plane, and this guy runs up to me. This man that I don't know runs up to me. He's like, "Hi, I'm a driver. Do you need a ride somewhere?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, of course." I was like, "Just please watch my bags really quick. I have to go pee, and then I'll be right back." And he's like, "Okay." And I run off to the bathroom, and I'm sitting on the pot, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, what have I just done? I just left my suitcase and everything with the first random guy that came up to me. He definitely stole everything I have. So I run out of the bathroom, and there he is standing there with my suitcases and a big smile on his face. So he was, in fact, a cab driver. So we get to his cab, and I pull out my napkin, and I say, 22nd and 9th, please. And he says, okay. And he drives me there. And then when we arrive, I said, "Hey, sir, can I borrow your cell phone?" And he was like, okay. So I borrow his cell phone, and I call the number that's on the napkin, and Damon picks up, and I said, "I'm here." And he was like, okay, I'll be down. So he comes down, he opens the cab door, and I'll never forget, I saw his face, that beautiful man, only this time he was wearing bright red lipstick. I don't know why. Actually, I do. But anyway, he was wearing bright red lipstick, and he takes my bags. And I remember having this thought of like, oh, well, he's gay. So this is good. I he's not going to try anything on me. That was my thought. Now, of course, I've evolved. Just because you wear lipstick and you're a man doesn't mean you're gay. And in this case, he was not. I believe he was bi. Anyway, so we go up in fact, I know he was bi. We go up 6 flights of stairs. There's no elevator in this old building. So we truck it up 6 floors. He opens up the door to this dingy, tiny studio that is 100% the size of your bathroom. There was a mattress on the floor, a cassette player, even though it was 2006. He just had a cassette player playing Frank Sinatra. And there was one green light in the corner. Don't ask me why it was green, but it was green. The kitchen was essentially in the bathroom. It was just a tiny, tiny studio. And I remember walking in, looking around, and I sort of wasn't even fazed. I guess there was a moment of like, what have I done? But when you're 18 and you're just dangerously impulsive and nothing scares you and you just want to experience every bit of life, maybe that was just me. But I went in, and we ended up falling in love, or so I thought. We had this crazy romance there. He would paint me naked. I would be lying on the bed smoking my cigarettes, and he would paint me terribly, but he would paint me nonetheless. We'd have these screaming match fights where we'd be screaming on the street, and he would run out into the middle of the street and lay down on the middle of the street and scream, "I'm not getting up until you kiss me." That's the kind of love it was, or addiction. He told me he was a photographer, but really he was a drug dealer, which I liked even more than a photographer because I was a drug addict. So we would spend our days getting stoned and drinking and going to these wild parties and doing photo shoots as well. And it was just this wild, wild time. I suppose I could just tell you one of my favorite stories from this time. But if you want to know more about the crazy romance with Damon, it's all in my book, Idiot. If you haven't read that, that's my first book that I wrote. It's called Idiot. And you could get it, honestly, wherever books are sold, or listen to the audiobook. But, okay, so do I tell you this one little story? All right, I'll tell you this one little story. Wait, fuck. Okay, so the reason I brought him up, oh my God, is because the only time I've really felt myself, other than 2 months ago, the only time I've ever felt myself kind of protest eating, just not want to eat, was when I was with him. I remember I would go days and just eat so minimally because I was in this constant state of stress and like fight or flight mode. He was verbally and physically abusive. He would grab me. He would never like punch me or hit me, but he would grab me really hard. So I had bruises all up and down my arms. He would grab my jaw and my neck, pin me down a lot, things like that. He was very forceful with me, but he would never like punch me. But I would say he was physically abusive in there. He would grab me hard to where I had bruises, and he was extraordinarily controlling. Very much so. So I had never been treated like that before. And I was terrified. I was terrified that he was going to really hurt me one day. And he probably would have if we stayed together. But so my body was like, you're not eating, no. And he would be like, eat something. And I just couldn't. I was so scared. But anyway, so that was the only time. And then my sister came out to rescue me, and she had never seen me so skinny and covered in bruises. So she was very concerned. But yeah, so this time around isn't as bad as that. Obviously, I'm not covered in bruises. I'm sober. I'm still eating, but I am eating less. And so I'm watching it, and I'm going to make sure to keep talking to professionals about it and make sure it's under control. But anyway, that's why I brought Damon, we'll call him, up, is because that was the only time that you could argue I had major food issues was when I was with him. I was in this abusive relationship, and it was bad. Okay, so I'm going to tell you one of my favorite stories, and it's fucked up, but it's a great story. So we're in this tiny studio apartment. It's like 1 a.m. We're smoking weed, laying on the bed, probably either laughing or fighting. It was always one of the two. And all of a sudden we hear this knock on the door. I'm like, who is that? It's 1 a.m. And then we hear the knock again. And then we hear, Damon? It's this girl. And I'm like, who is that? And Damon's like, shh, quiet. And then she gets louder. Damon, open the door. Damon, I love you. Damon, please open the door. She starts crying, screaming for him. I love you. Open that door. And I'm like, who is that? And you know, when something is really disturbing and uncomfortable and you laugh, it's like when you laugh at a funeral. It's not funny, but you're just so uncomfortable that you laugh. And I was probably high too. So she's like, David, I love you. And I'm like, ah. And I just let out this laugh, not because I didn't feel it for her, but because I was uncomfortable and I didn't know how to handle it. So then she leaves. We say nothing, and she eventually leaves. Cut to a week later, I'm scheduled to have this photo shoot with one of Damon's friends. So I go out and I have this shoot, this hotel. It's epic, so much fun. And I don't get back till like 2 a.m. So Damon was the only one with a key. I was completely under his control. I had no key. I had no money. I had no phone. So yeah, I'm surprised I'm alive. So I go up 6 flights of stairs, and I knock on the door, and it's locked, and he's not answering. I'm like, shit, it's 2 a.m. So I knock again, and he doesn't answer. So I'm like, Damon, knock on the door, no answer. And then I'm like, Damon. And all of a sudden, the door opens really slowly. And when it finally opens, there stands a beautiful brunette woman. I'm confused. Who is this woman in our apartment at 2 a.m? She looks at me, she sighs, and she goes, it's not so funny now, is it? Is that not a movie? It's like one of those moments I'll just never forget. And then she swings the door open even more and reveals Damon lying half naked on the mattress, which is on the floor. He's passed out, the bottle of vodka next to him. And I just assessed the situation. And it was very clear to me that she was the girl, the ex-girlfriend that was crying and begging for him the week prior. And yeah, she heard me laughing, and she just came with that line. It's not so funny now, is it? Like, gotta give it to her. Props to her. What a moment for her. So I assess the situation. I look at him, I look at her, and I realize, okay, this is my time to get out. I had just made friends with this photographer guy. I could go stay with him, you know? I got to get out of here. He's clearly with this girl now. He's crazy, and I've known he was crazy at this point. So I got to get out. Now's my chance. So I just look at her and I said, look, just let me pack my things and I'll go. And she goes, make it quick. And I'm like, okay, I'll make it quick. So she lets me into the apartment. I start packing my things. Meanwhile, Damon is still passed out entirely on the bed. Sorry, hold on. Let me just get a drink of water. So Damon is still passed out on the bed, has no idea that his girlfriend and ex-girlfriend are standing in the studio. She makes her way onto the bed and she starts sitting right next to him and petting his hair. So she's petting his hair as he's passed out, half naked. I'm manically packing my clothes and everything, trying to, get out before he wakes up. And then I grab his phone and I text the photographer and I'm like, hey, it's Laura. I'm texting you from his phone. Can I come stay with you tonight? I have to get out of here. And he was like, yes, come stay with me. So I was like, great. So he texts me his address and then as I'm packing my things and I'm all flustered and I'm scared and it was just a very scary situation. And then I look up at the girl who's petting my boyfriend's head and I'm like, hey, I just want to say that I'm sorry for laughing last week. Like that was really fucked up. And I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have laughed when you were upset. I'm sorry. And she was like, oh, it's okay. She's like, I get it. She's like, I know how he can be. And I was like, right? He's a little cuckoo. And she's like, oh, totally. He's crazy. And I'm like, yeah, no, seriously, he's crazy. So I'm not kidding you. We start bonding over like how crazy this man is. And we start laughing. And then I'm like, hey, like we're pretty much out of weed. Like, do you know where I could get some more? And she was like, yeah, I've got to connect. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah. So now we're like going to go get weed together, like becoming friends. Okay. So we're laughing, we're connecting. I still plan on going and staying with this photographer guy and then getting home, back to Downers Grove. And just as I'm almost done packing and we're laughing, all of a sudden, boom, Damon wakes up. His eyes shoot open. He slow-mo looks to the left, sees her. Slow-mo looks to the right, sees me. Then it's like the monster wakes up in him. He starts freaking out. He grabs her immediately. He goes, get the fuck out. Get out. And she goes, no, Damon, please, no. I love you, Damon. And then I stand up. I said, no, Damon, I'm leaving. Not her, me. I'm leaving. He grabs me. He throws me on the bed. Now I'm petrified. I don't know what he's going to do next. He grabs the girlfriend or the other girl and he says, you get out of here. You get out of here right now. He's grabbing her. He's pushing her out the door. She's screaming. She's begging. She's pleading, please, David, no, please, I love you, please, don't kick me out, please, I love you. I said, no, David, I said, she needs to go, not me, and he grabs me, throws me on the bed again as I try and escape, pushes her out the door, locks the door. I'm shaking, I'm frozen, I don't know what's gonna happen next. And then he gets on top of me, I'm on the bed, he takes his hand and he puts it on my jaw, around my neck. And he looks at me so close, his eyes so close to mine. And he starts crying. And he's like, how could you do this to me? You can't leave me. You can't leave me. I love you. All this stuff. And he's literally got his hand around my neck. And I just knew at that moment that he was stronger than me, that I was not about to win this fight, that, you know how your survival instinct just kicks in? Well, mine kicked in and I knew that I had to play it cool. I knew that I had to pretend that everything was okay or he could kill me. So I just said to him, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I love you. I'm so sorry, you know? And I just played the game because I knew if I didn't, then he could have really, really hurt me or killed me. Anyway, to find out what happens next, you really do have to read this book because I go into all the detail, but that's just one. That's just part of it. All right. That's just the beginning of the chaos of what my life was before I got sober. Wild. And now my idea of a wild night is staying up till 11, watching too many Netflix episodes. Okay. And with that, I love you. Thank you for, I didn't even tell you my other exciting thing. Maybe I'll do it next time. I went out to dinner with my girlfriends and I was so excited because I don't go out at night ever. And it was really, really nice. So I just recommend to nurture your friendships. If you don't have them, please do everything you can to try and form connections because, man, we put so much importance on romantic relationships, but having a strong tribe of women or, platonic friends who you just love and care about is so powerful and so healing and it's just everything. So I'm begging you to put some effort in wherever you can because I did and it's amazing. I love you. Comment below anything you want. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to follow on Spotify or wherever you listen to this podcast and subscribe to my YouTube if you haven't already for weekly videos. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and I'll see you next week, okay? Or you'll hear me next week. Okay. Love you, 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 love you. I'm going to go eat because food is good and I'm going to eat it because food is good and I'm going to eat food. Okay. Bye.